named for a hobo that reclused himself within. There are several stories about this gentleman that I will recall here. Hobo's Hideaway, or the Hobo's Den, Hobo's Hollow, Hobo's Hill, Hobo's Home, Hobo's Knob, Hobo's Cave. Many names, but one location. But in the days of old, I remember my first quest to locate the Hobo's Hideaway, which at that time required a walk which is pretty extensive, and it followed the hills and the valleys of the forest, and it went along a fire road. I believe the round trip walk was probably 6 to 7 miles. Winter was the best time to visit due to timber rattlesnakes. So what is the Hideaway? The den was an old rock shelter, and it was a very large overhang, and it was used by a builder to stack stones neatly, snugly, all around to form walls. It was entirely enclosed with a very neat door frame constructed nicely and heavy-duty wooden door made to cover. It was a home. The stones were chinked with probably moss, which was long gone by the time I trolled along, but inside was a very sizable, in honesty, good living space. There was room for a bed on a stone ledge that was there. I could easily stand within and reach up and touch the top. I'm 6 foot tall, so I would estimate the ceiling being anywhere from 6.5 to 7 foot high, on average. I have a video and pictures from just about every season in different times to show the change of conditions to the area over the years. Summer was the best time to visit, as I mentioned, I believe, because of the snakes. It's a great area around it with sweet ferns and stones and a prime habitat for these guys to hang out. The first time we searched, we did not find this. We climbed the rocky hillsides and searched with our vague directions and had no luck. We just found Mago's Peak and we got cold. I searched years later and I found it after a short jaunt. I biked up to the location where it was rumored to be, walked into the woods, walked along a ridgeline, and eventually found it. Now, I visited this many, many times, and it has gone from being abandoned entirely to being occupied again, most likely by hunters. And how did I come to find out about this? Well, legends, tells. I cannot even remember the first time that I heard about it, but I was sold on my efforts to actually go and find this place. On the first several visits, the den had not been subjected to much traffic, and the original door lay within it, as well as another set of wooden planks which formed what looked like a seat or a bed, uncomfortable but usable. There was very poor shaped scatterings of stone and rock chimney in there, and there were some rusty remnants of a grate and some chimney pipes to the outside, completely unusable. The fire ring outside was intact and nothing unusual within or around it. It was, maybe a bottle or two found in there, but other than that, it was long ago abandoned. The stories and the legends of the Hobo's Hideaway are many. One story recalls an old trapper who found the rock shelter, used the stones and the natural features to build his house. So he lived there year-round and trapped and lived off the land. He would use a mule, of course he would use a mule, and take my furs to town. That town would have been Clairfield, Pennsylvania, not too far by a way the crow flies, but far enough to stay clear of the townsfolk. He would go in, trade his furs, and he would get flour, salt, staples of dietary need. He would live off the land otherwise, but he would get items to repair his traps, oil for lamps, etc. He did not talk much to the townspeople at all, but they always noted that he had many furs and he had lots of silver and gold to trade. Of course, because that's how every tale goes. But several men of lower moral standards talked amongst themselves of plans to follow him home, kill him, and rob him. But according to legend, he would often travel a different route, stop and camp in small places, and sometimes, after 3 days of them attempting to follow him, he would elude these men and be gone. They were never able to find his den. It was rumored only 2 people knew his location, a doctor and a fellow trapper who kept the secret of his location to the grave. But one spring, the old trapper did not come to town, and the trapper and the doctor made a trip out to the den to see what happened. And when they went to the den, they found that he had passed away during the winter. It was said that the doctor went back and told the townsfolk that he had passed away from smallpox to keep them from going out and stealing everything that was inside of the hobo's hideaway, because people feared the pox. The doctor and the friend trapper never told of where he was buried. So that's one story. And the second story comes from Legends of Clarefield County by Melvin Lingle. And I encourage anyone out there who's interested in fun stories and legends from the Clarefield County to get a hold of Melvin's books, because he does write some very fun material. And it just so happens that the one is called Pierre Bell, the Knob's Hermit. And I'm going to quote it exactly as he writes. Quote, "It could have been a mansion, but it wasn't. And there could have been children, but there weren't. It was only a cave, but it was a home. It was the year of the pumpkin flood, and another war was ending. For 10 years, the cave was home to Stony. Now, no one is quite certain what Stony's last name is, but research now proves the story and the legend goes like this. Pierre Stony Bale came from the mountain from the center county, from his native Nova Scotia, to seek his fortune in the lumber business. His longtime partnership with James and Stokes Company earned him a well-deserved reputation of a sharp businessman at the time when hard work and long hours were the only rewards of an honest, educated man. Education and work left him little time for romance. Settling in a little village, Eden, Stony met and fell in love with a young teacher named Sarah Lewis. She was the oldest of the family and was thus responsible for the support of her widowed mother and her 5 sisters. Sarah loved Stony, even as poor as he was. Now, I'm going to break up and say that's a little confusing because we just got done talking about how he was a sharp businessman. Okay, back to the quote. Sarah loved Stony, even as poor as he was, but her father's debts haunted her. So she married A.I. Taylor for the financial support he could provide her ailing mother. They say that this is what drove Stony to seek the life of a hermit in a cave in the Knobs Mountain, north of Goshen. He sought refuge from his jilted love affair through his garden, his painting, and his poetry. It was rumored he'd sold his share of the lumber business and was in effect a very rich man. A visitor to his cave would be greeted by a statuesque, bearded, robed man of highly intellectual conversation. His walls were decorated with the animal skins, but in the form of a prized sheepskins, honoring his many degrees from the various schools of the East. But now was the time of the departure from the mountain. His loneliness he would soon exchange for a new life in the town of Clarefield below. This was the night he would attend Pye's Opera House for the festive and final celebration with his old partners James and Stokes. At the Opera House, he was introduced to Miss Lucy Croft, the youngest and the most beautiful of the 3 Croft sisters. They spent the entire evening together exchanging their life histories. Lucy was very young and exciting, and she hung on every word of Stony's stories and jokes. Lucy asked to see Stony again, but he explained that his life as a recluse was about to end, and he planned to leave on the morning train to Harrisburg. Lucy begged him to stay by her side. Stony fell in love that night with the touch of her hand to his shabby beard and a request to remain just a few more days to keep her company in the strange town. With a kiss to his cheek, Stony now surrendered to her request and stayed the night with his partners in the Dimeling Hotel. The next morning, he visited the barber and bought new clothes. While having breakfast at the hotel, he met an old friend he hadn't seen in 8 years. It was Sarah Taylor. His requited love had again returned. She explained that she had been divorced for 2 years, since her ailing mother died and her husband had lost interest in her delicate but boring teacher life. Sarah explained she had never lost her love for him and had regretted her decision every day for the past 8 years. She pressed his hand to her lips and cried. But it was too late. Stony had fallen in love with this young Lucy, and he was finally over Sarah. Sarah begged him to come to California with her. They would start over again in a new world. Stony said no. Sarah left on the morning train and Stony stayed on. For the next 3 days, Stony and young Lucy were inseparable. On Wednesday morning, Stony told Lucy that he had to make his trip to Harrisburg in order to settle his accounts and record his leases. Lucy begged him to return by Friday, as she had a surprise for him. Stony promised he would return in plenty of time, for he also had a surprise for her. He kissed her goodbye, and he set out to collect his fortune for his new life with his new love. When he returned, he would ask Lucy to marry him. It was late Friday night when Stony returned. He inquired at the hotel where he could find Miss Lucy Croft. He was told she was at a party in the upstairs ballroom. Stony was greeted at the entrance of the ballroom by Lucy's two sisters. Quote, "We are so happy to meet you. Lucy has told us so much about you and how you kept her company all week. It's lonely being stuck in a new town with no friends and no close relatives. You were the only real friend that she had to keep her company while she was waiting for her fiancé to return. She was really wanting you to be the one to give her away in marriage, since our father being dead and all." Unquote from her sisters. Come on, Lucy, what's up with that? That's not part of the tale. Stony returned to his hermitage on the mountain, receiving few visitors and keeping company with only his books and his gardening. 5 years later, a hunter found Stony on a cold spring morning in his eternal sleep. In his hand was a tattered engraved wedding invitation of Miss Lucy Croft to Mr. A.I. Taylor. And there is an author's note to this tale from Melvin. And it says, although the story was written in another version, in the form of a novelette by Henry W. Shoemaker, with the facts entwined with some fiction, the Hermit of Knobs was a real person. It is suspected that his name was not Pierre Bayle, but actually Pierre Bell, who has relatives living in the Frenchville, Pennsylvania area today. So which one of those tales is true? Probably neither one of them. But the Hobo's Den is definitely real and standing firmly in place on the hillside as it has been for probably the last 80 years. On that note, thank you for watching our video. Please like and subscribe if you like our content, and we hope to continue to bring you more. Cheers.